All right. Hello, girls.
Hello.
Welcome to our next episode or series of Meet the Faces Behind the Actions for the Global Women's Caucus. I'm Stayce Camparo. I'm co-director of communications of the GWC along with Jamie McAfee. And Joy Notoma is our co-team leader of the Books Abroad Feminist Club.
Yes, Feminist Book Club.
Feminist Book Club. All right. And let's just go around because we'll be talking today about what it is like to take on multiple roles. A professional and a volunteer, and then also as a mother, because we are all mothers here. So I am a research assistant. So I spend a lot of my time, I'm in between studies right now. So I spend a lot of my time doing research and writing that research up for a lab that I work in out of Harvard. And then I also volunteer for Democrats Abroad. And then I'm a mother of two. My oldest son is 4.5. My youngest daughter is 2.5. Finnegan and Alice. So next.
Yeah, I am a freelance writer and editor and journalist. So for writing, I'm really blessed, first of all, that I'm able to work independently. But it also means, if anyone's familiar with freelancing, it also means that I'm kind of always working and always looking for work. And I am mostly these days working on a short story collection, fiction, and in addition to that, I volunteer with Democrats Abroad as the team leader of Books Abroad, the feminist reading group. Yeah, and I have a son, a 1-year-old. A 1-year-old just turned 1, a baby, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think we'll get into like childcare and how it all works later. But yeah, that's who I am in a nutshell.
Great.
And I am the communications co-chair with Stacey for the Global Women's Caucus. I am an amateur graphic designer and have had a lot of fun in the last 6 to 7 months learning how to create good graphics that get our message across clearly for the Global Women's Caucus. So that's a whole new endeavor for me in the last 6 to 8 months. In my former life in the States, I was a teacher, a public school teacher for 12 years. I've taught in 3 major cities, in Orlando, Florida, in Las Vegas, and Denver, just outside of Denver, Colorado, and Littleton. I'm a Colorado voter and I live in Edinburgh, Scotland. And I have recently, after the election and at the end of last year, started applying for work over here in Scotland. And I was hired on at the local school that I can walk to, which is really nice because we are still carless over here. So I had limited options and I was really grateful to get a job down at the local school because I'm already immersed in this community. So I work part-time at the local school and I have 1 4-year-old daughter, Eleanor, named after Eleanor Roosevelt, who's a big heroine of mine. And yeah, it's a balance, and particularly this last year that balance has been disrupted lots of times. So I know we'll get into that, but that's me.
Well, how about if we just get into that now? That question was sort of scheduled a little later, but let's talk about it now. Because we know that parenting is being talked about a lot right now with policy, and thankfully it's being sort of interjected into a lot of the different bills that we see coming up. We've seen in the last year parents struggling with the pandemic, especially mothers. So what has the last year been like for you in your respective country and in your particular situation. Joy, do you want to start?
Sure. So for me, the crazy thing is that I actually moved through this whole thing. Like I actually just moved to France in February of last year of 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. Had my son in April. And the plan was for my mom to come and be here to help. But then of course that couldn't happen. So as far as, childcare has always been my husband and I. And I'm very grateful that we both work from home, work, au distance, teletravail, work at a distance, remotely, that's the word. And that we are able to take care of our son in the way that we that we do. He has my son in the morning. I have him in the afternoons and evenings because he works on East Coast hours. So, but it's a juggling act, and it's not easy. And I haven't had help besides my husband. We also don't live in the same town as my in-laws. So it's not easy, but what I am grateful for is that we are able to set our own hours and we can manage it. I've had to really set boundaries in terms of like what I take on. I recently stepped down from the leadership, the steering committee of the GWC, and I'm glad that I can just focus on our group and not have to, take part of like being the steering committee. So I can now like make the Books Abroad the group that I wanted to be, and feel a little less pressured by the other parts of leadership. But yeah, it's taken being knowledgeable of my needs, being honest about what I can do, not being embarrassed, and just asking. I thought I was going to have to give up all of Democrats Abroad volunteering, but thankfully my team said, no, please just step down from the steering committee, but stay with Books Abroad. So that's what's happened.
So there's, along with like sort of all the negative things that we hear about people juggling, one sort of maybe small positive thing that I'm hearing is that in some ways, maybe some people have been able to sort of make priorities in their lives. And whereas before they were maybe spread out, they had the time to do that. The pandemic making us sort of, with the limited time, we've had to really, okay, these are the things that are important. This is where I can devote my time, and maybe later we get back to sort of, spreading out a little bit more, but some priorities and also just knowing then for yourself, like, these are the things that I truly love to do. Of course, family is important and the Books Abroad is important and my work is important. And maybe in these other areas I can scale down a little bit. I have to scale down a little bit.
Right. And since we're the Global Women's Caucus, I think there's also something else there for women, to be able to state our needs, and to speak to speak up, and say like, oh, actually, this is a no and this is a yes,
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity that's been presented by the pandemic, the circumstances. But it's a lesson that we'll take.
That's true.
That I'll take for sure.
That's true. So true. And Jamie, how about you? How's the last year been?
Yeah, it's
Year and
been,
a half.
I just feel like it's a year and a couple months now. I felt like back in January, February, I was already a bit anxious as the wave really came across Europe to Scotland. And yes, similar situation to Joy. We moved over from Denver to Edinburgh, July of 2019, and we really didn't get settled for a couple of months, just figuring out where's the grocery store, how do things work here, getting a flat and just getting situated. And so we weren't really comfortable until the holidays. And then we only had a couple of months, and I was signing my daughter up for nursery at that time. And I had just signed her up and gotten her into a nursery that I really liked and that was accessible to us, again, without having a car. And at that point was when I was going to begin the job hunt myself, 6 months in. So when the pandemic hit and everything shut down and childcare shut down, I became the sole caregiver for our daughter, and it delayed my search to continue in education, in the education field. And when we came over here, I wanted to kind of broaden my horizons outside of the classroom. I have a master's degree in international educational policy, and I like studying systems that different countries use. And so I was really interested in getting involved here in Scotland on their structure and their philosophy here, and not necessarily being in the classroom. But all of that got put off. My husband then was home from the office, and we were in a flat as opposed to our single family home back in Denver, Colorado. So I became really the shusher in the house with my daughter, and trying to get her outside. The only opportunities we had to get outside into any type of really green space was a park that we had access to. We had a key to, because we were right in the city, and we went there every single day just to get out of the house. And so the pandemic for me, I feel like I'm kind of lumped into this group of millions of women who have either left the workforce or haven't been able to re-enter the workforce after having a child due to the pandemic. And I've been set back. My career has been set back because of this, because childcare was just simply not available last year for me. And not only was childcare not available, we had just moved to a new country where we knew no one. I didn't have a sitter. I didn't have someone that I trusted to, and no one could come into our home anyway. So I was on 24 hours a day. So we did a lot of calls to my mom back in Florida, where I would put my daughter and just say, Mom, just read her, make up a story, entertain her. I just need some time to myself, which my husband was able to give me at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, our time. And things let up last summer. She was able to go back into nursery last summer as things opened up here in Scotland. But it took to, last December, January, for me to actually have the time, because I think we all know looking for a job is a job in and of itself too, and then converting all of your American stuff to European CV and the way things work here. So I finally had the time, and then was lucky to get hired on only our part-time. So I feel like my career has been blunted, and I'm not sure I'm going to be ever be able to make up kind of this lost time. On a positive note, though, going back to what Joy said about prioritizing things, I've realized what is really important with spending quality time with my daughter, what we want to do, and it's getting outside. We've been outside in Scottish weather, doesn't matter the weather now, more often than I ever did when we were back in the States. And not having a vehicle, having the pandemic just kind of close in the city has allowed us to go out and explore so much. And so quality time with her now is doing crafts, because I got all the crafts in the world when the pandemic hit, and being outside as much as possible. So those are two things that I know. And we kind of shed, she didn't have the opportunity to say, go to ballet class, gymnastics, all the things that like you sign your kids up for, particularly in the States. I think it's a cultural thing. It's not really a thing here to sign up for everything, be the soccer mom that's going to 3 different events. So we didn't do all of those classes or anything like that. So I wasn't overwhelmed with, all of these and overwhelming her with all of these options, all these hobbies. And instead we just went to the park and went out into the woods, and that we've become really grateful for, because we've been close. And
we talked about sort of the priorities and how it's been, like Jamie said, outdoors, and also finding out sort of those maybe extracurricular or volunteer things or work things that are important to us. But that also means that we've had to compromise a lot. And I know, I mean, myself as well, I had to put off a year of applying to a master's program because of the pandemic, because I also work from home, just like you, Joy. I've sort of been the caretaker, and both my kids are, in preschool age here in Germany. And they were both in, it's called the Kita. But they had to stay home with me for a few months. And it was a good thing I worked from home, because I was able then to just have them at home and schedule around them while my husband was working. So what then, is there anything else you want to add maybe into your parents are constantly making compromises. It's just a part of parenting. So we don't have to limit it specifically to the compromises you've made during the pandemic, but what do you see as being, a professional, also then spending some of your time as a volunteer and then being a parent? What are some compromises that you've had to make to juggle these roles, Joy?
Yeah, I think for me, before I became a mom, just a year, my son's a year old. I knew that that my work setup, I've always been remote, even before the pandemic. Before France, I lived in Benin Republic in West Africa, where I reported mostly on women's issues. And wrote for like a lot of international news outlets. But I always was remote, and that was like the way I also envisioned motherhood. That I would be able to work from home and also take care of my son. I just didn't know that I would be doing it without help. And when I say without help, I am also aware of the fact that like I've got, the co-parent and my husband, and that we can do it this way. But it's still even a lot for the two of us, and we're looking forward
village.
Yeah. And we're looking forward to be able to put my son in creche, which is like the preschool here. But he's, he was born in the pandemic. He's born on April 1st, 2020, So this pandemic life is what we've always known with him. And the compromise, really, to answer your question, Stacey, is just like the compromise of how I envisioned motherhood. It's just like the compromise of what this was supposed to be like. It was supposed to be, I feel so sad when I think of like all the things that I always envisioned taking him to. I envisioned going to like those sing-along groups, and that really our only entertainment is the park. And he's a baby, so he can't climb on the toys and, do the games and the swings and the sliding board and all of that. So it's sitting on the blanket in the park with the toys that I bought from home, and having, snacks out there. He's starting to walk now, he's standing up and things now. So hopefully soon we'll be able to do more at the park. A few months ago, the sing-along groups started up again. So last weekend, he went to his very first sing-along group. And that was just so precious, Of course, it's like 6 kids in there with all of us have our masks on and we're all spread out. But it was precious. And it's the compromise of just what I envisioned, adjusting. And then also I didn't know that I would get involved with Democrats abroad. What motivated me was, of course, the presidential election coming up, and then also the racial uprising in the United States. And not just in the United States, it is everywhere. It's global. The racial uprising that happened last summer in the wake of George Floyd's death, killing, I should say, and it's not the world that I envision bringing my son into, but it comes with a lot of blessings, I think, as well.
That's beautiful. I really do. One point I want to hit upon a little bit is the research that I do is in developmental psychology. And I think you were right on target when you said it's the compromise of the vision that I had as a mother. Because I feel that too, as a mother of a 4.5 and a 2.5-year-old, I envisioned my kids doing swimming lessons and getting in. I was a ballet dancer in my former life, so getting into ballet, or going to museums and traveling. My husband and I want to introduce the world to our kids, and we haven't been able to do that. But as a researcher, I know that that's not so much of a compromise for them as it is a compromise for just this vision that I wanted to give them, and that the importance that, Joy and you, Jamie, that, you've spent quality time with your child in the last year that way surpasses, in terms of this person growing up into a healthy adult, way surpasses like anything else. But you hit on a good point that kind of moves me to a next question, and then I'll start with you, Jamie, to answer the question. I got into volunteering because I wanted to do something like civic responsibility and so forth, but also because I wanted to do it for my children. I wanted them to see me do something that didn't come with a salary or didn't come with something giving, but it was me giving to society. So I just want to maybe get your idea of why you volunteer and sort of that why in relation to, you being a mother.
Yeah, it's a great question, because this is the most volunteering I've ever done, I think, is with Democrats abroad. And to what Joy said, it's because of the last 4 years in the States, and everything, not just politically, but culturally, the changes and hopefully the growth that's happening back in the States. I've always been politically active. I want to be a part of that. And so donating my time and my skills to the organization was intentional last year to get out more votes. And now it's changed to this year. We've accomplished that goal of electing a Democratic Congress and having Joe Biden and Kamala in the White House. And it felt like such a celebration and a moment of pause last year. And then the minute they were in, it was like, okay, hit the ground running. How much can we get done and change this year? And so there's all of this stuff that I enjoy talking about and want to model for my own daughter. A woman's right to choose, equal pay for equal work. And all of these issues are boiling over and boiling up in the States right now, and across the world, really. I mean, America drives the conversation. So I think it comes back to the cliche, you want to make a better world for your own child, and particularly, for women and for our daughters. And my daughter right now doesn't understand the difference between my volunteer work and my work, what I'm paid for and what I'm not paid for. So we just always say, Mommy has a meeting tonight, or, I have some work I need to get done on the computer. But recently, I think, the volunteering we're doing now, it has to be online. It's on a screen, really. And I know DA, prior to the pandemic, it was a lot of outings, get out the vote events, and there was gatherings of people in different countries. And I hope we can eventually get back to that, because we managed to go to one outing here with Democrats abroad in Scotland and meet fellow Americans right before the pandemic hit. And I would like to have a family event and meet other mothers here who are just as politically engaged as I am. one of the things that we've done recently is we did a community cleanup at that park that we went to all last year for the pandemic. The neighborhood got together and we did a cleanup and just scrubbing benches, pulling weeds, picking up sticks, that kind of thing. And I brought my daughter to that, and I explained to her that we are donating our time when this is work, but it's not really work. We're helping our community by cleaning these benches. And she got so into it. I was so proud of her because she was like giving orders to all these folks, like, you need to scrub that bench. There's bird poo over there. You know, like, I think modeling it and getting our kids into volunteering themselves at an age appropriate level. Joy, I'm not sure that, you know, your baby would be able to do too much right now, but eventually in the next year, you know, and getting our kids into it.
Yeah.
Definitely these and definitely probably the things that you're talking to your son about with, and, you know, with these themes. You know, you guys are amazing parents. The work that you do, for DA and not for DA, the work that you do is amazing, but especially you guys are great mothers. And I think we should definitely continue, maybe like in 6 months or something, we should meet again and continue the conversation, or even a little earlier, maybe in 3 months, we'll see. But I want to leave on one anecdote because Jamie, you talked about how like your daughter says that she can't really separate, you know, what's work and what's volunteer right now. So I talked to my son, who's almost 5, a lot about, you know, the DA work that I do for the Global Women's Caucus. And he's interested in it, but, you know, he's a kid, he doesn't ask too many questions. But at one point I asked him, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What I do for work. And he said, well, mommy works for Biden. She goes to the bulk store and she makes decisions. It's like, yep.
Oh, I love it.
That's good. I like that. That's gonna go on my resume. Anyway, we're out of time. So thank you so much for joining me today. And yeah, we'll see you guys again soon. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Take care, Jamie.
Thank you. Nice seeing you guys.